Welcome to another Imaginal Waypoint video. I am excited to share this one because I think the theme that's moving through starting today on July 1st, I'm actually recording it the day of, so I'm in the energy, is I think really relevant to many, both on a personal level, but I think especially on a collective level, especially for many heart-centered, purpose-driven people living in the United States or observing the United States and some other global things, of course. But this gate or gene key, however we want to look at it, number 39, is about the energy of provocation and reactivity. And it has to do with how we work with the energy of intensity that comes up when we are provoked and or when we provoke others, because the idea is, or one of the ideas connected to this collective theme, this invitation we all have to get curious about our relationship with it, is when we are activated. A word that's been used a lot, I think often overused, is triggered. When we're triggered, how do we move? How do we respond? Do we react? So the first thing is to notice your nervous system response. So fight, do we avoid? Fight? Do we come back with an energy of either anger, or it can also look like an attempt to control? So it could look like trying to fix, change, or manage an environment or a person. Do we fawn? Do we make nice as an attempt to find a sense of safety and belonging, even if it requires self-abandonment? Or do we freeze and just go into a deer in headlights nervous system response? So that's a place to get curious. Just when someone comes at you with an intense energy, when there's a collective issue, right? Like if there's legislation passed or something along those lines, how do you respond? I keep moving my body because that's the energy of this gate, is when that something happens that you don't expect, how do you how do you move forward? Or, in some cases, do you freeze? Um, so that's the first thing. And what I want to offer is that all of those responses have a very physiological effect. We like to conceptualize growth concepts, but every nervous system response is rooted in the body. And so it's really helpful if you have something jarring happening in your life, in your world, to get curious about how your body responds. And the first place that I find most helpful to get curious about is the breath. Does your breath get really short? Do you even notice that you're breathing? Because often when we're in a state of reactivity, breath is the first thing to get compromised. And it's a very wise guide. And one of the things I've said for years is you can trick your body lovingly into a more regulated state, regardless of your circumstances, to a point. I'm not saying to dismiss very real context or danger around you, but often we are reacting as if there is more danger, more imminent danger than there actually is. And so, since that is the majority of the time, we can use our breath. And one of the ways that can be really helpful is just to create it, to make it more regulated. So, one of my favorites is to breathe in for a count of four, slow count of four through the nose, and then breathe out through the mouth for at least a count of six. And one of the things I learned fairly recently is, because sometimes it was hard for me to get my breath regulated, is if you put your mouth as if you're sipping through a straw and breathe out that way, it naturally lengthens and slows the breath. So you breathe in through your nose and then you breathe out. And you can kind of feel, or maybe even observe in my body. That wasn't the full count, but I wanted to model it. And so if you can get your breath into a more regulated, safe, according to your body, it will feel like safety's coming in state, then you can be in a more responsive place as you navigate whatever just happened. And it could be someone using a tone with you that pulled something up from decades ago that has nothing to do with present moment. It could be that there's a disappointment, a health scare, financial concerns. It could be anything can provoke you because often provocation is kicking something that is far deeper than whatever is actually happening in the present moment. And I'm not saying it's fun. I'm not saying I like when I'm provoked. However, I've grown to meet it with as much compassion and curiosity as I can because often, and I see this in hindsight, the times I was most activated, provoked, perhaps even feeling hurt were the times I had the greatest opportunity to do some sort of deep recalibration within myself. So, another key point to this transit and working with it and really using it to deepen our sense of wholeness and our own leadership in the world is to sit with what is being activated, what the wound is that has been kicked, and see if we can get to that and offer it presence, curiosity, and compassion rather than getting caught up in good, bad, victim, aggressor kind of thinking. Because if something has been kicked and then it's activated, it's present for us to work with it. And again, it's not fun when our wounds are kicked, but I believe that our deepest healing, the things that we are working with for years and years and years, we all have some versions of that, they come up in cycles so that we can take another pass. It's not that we're failing at healing, it's that it has to be kicked, almost like the dust has to be kicked up so we can remember it, and then we have an opportunity. And that is completely separate from whoever or whatever activated it at times. Now, this is the nuance, and this is what might feel paradoxical. It doesn't mean we don't deal with the situation. It just means we don't exclusively fixate on changing that external circumstance, because if we do that, we miss the opportunity to upgrade, shift, or refine our internal attitude towards it. And our relationship with whatever happened and whatever part within us got activated, or even just our own nervous system, that's where we have the greatest power. And that's where this key, this gate offers us something, because when we're activated, there's energy in the system, and that energy can be used to reinforce, amplify, underline, and highlight stories of victimhood or control patterns to try and, change the world outside of us so that finally we can feel good. It actually won't, often it won't work because there's something deeper. Or we can go, okay, there's energy here. I'm going to regulate my nervous system. I'm going to see if anything actually needs to be done to make sure that I am safe, like not just feeling safe emotionally on the deeper my wound's been activated level, but like, am I actually safe in this moment? And then from there, reminding the system that we have creative capacity, and then asking, what is that activated feeling, that pain, wanting wanting us to move it the direction of? Like if I'm feeling like a victim, what is a creative endeavor and action, and it can be tiny, that will connect me to a sense of personal power, service, agency, whatever it is? What's the creative move away from the pain and towards creative influence, impact, movement? And that is what I think gets lost in these moments. And I am very imperfect at this. I can still get stuck in my victimhood. I can still get stuck in overwhelm. I'm not in any way saying I'm done with this. However, there's an alchemy when that intensity happens. And I've learned to be with the process with a completely different attitude on my good days. And then there is this sense of creative, dynamic energy. I thought of some examples that might help this land. I think years ago when The Matrix came out, I remember, not that I've seen this movie in a long time, and I hope I'm remembering it correctly because I'm not one to remember movies. That's my disclaimer. That there was some fight scene or something was happening, and somebody shot something at the main character, pushed something. All I remember it was like a maybe a laser or something. And instead of him pushing back or curling up in a ball, he just sort of bent in this really weird, creative way. And then just through that creative action, that disruption, that instigation, that provocation energy missed him, just completely missed him. So that's one way this can feel. It's like, how can you not, it's not avoidance. It's how can you move in a way where you're not so affected by that intense energy that is likely someone else's unresolved pain, reactivity, or fear in motion, outward motion. The other thing is a more collective sense. I think many of us in the United States are watching things politically and very disheartened, of course, because we're watching harm, we're watching suffering, we're watching certain attitudes that are unkind be normalized and affirmed, and it can be hard to not feel stuck and reactive. I hear countless people talking about this. This is part of why my TEDx talk emerged. And if you haven't watched that, I highly recommend it. It's tagged on my YouTube channel as well. But how do we, instead of getting stuck in victimhood, blame, and reactivity, which are not creative energies, how do we sort of be with what is without avoiding, but also reclaim our stance where we can be creative? And I think we're starting to see that in this country. We're seeing that there was this initial shock, and that's part of how this gate can feel of, oh my gosh, all of this horrible stuff is happening and people are suffering. And now we're seeing groups come together to form initiatives. We're seeing new types of political campaigns and candidates. We're seeing individuals come into a sense of purpose and their voice and contribution. We're seeing this creative potential called forth because we are so provoked, I believe. And I'm a deep believer in people's creative capacity. I think we as humans are wildly creative and have just lived in a world that has dulled and numbed that creative potential through our conditioning and through many things that create dysregulated nervous systems. This season, I mean, this whole season, but especially right now, what's activated in the collective archetypal space is, where are you in this story of provocation and creative potential? Where are you? And what is it that you right now, based on that, are being asked to do? Now, it can be as simple as, this person at work is driving me crazy. They annoy me. And I find myself thinking about how much they annoy me rather than this this creative project that I do after work that brings me so much nourishment, right? I don't know. Or this friendship that's so fun. Noticing where your energy is going. And maybe at work, you just consciously unhook and take 4 deep breaths every time that person pops up into your mind or comes into your space and you find your system activated. It can be as simple as that, because the system and our neurology rewires through practice and repetition. That's why our old patterns are on such an auto unconscious loop because we've practiced those thoughts, feelings, and beliefs so often. We can retrain that. And so if there's something that's activating you, it's actually like CrossFit for your neurology. It's giving you a consistent opportunity to shift your reactivity to regulation and then choice and agency and creative contribution. So it's not fun to be provoked. It's not fun to be surprised in an uncomfortable way by life. And right now, we have an opportunity to become more dynamic in how we work with this intense energy that I believe has a lot of creative potential on the individual and collective level.